Welcome back to Drawing for Communication, and this is session 2, and this week we are dealing with fruit and paper bags. The lecture talked about the systematic way in which light interacts with an object. If we look at this orange, of course, it is spherical in its nature. It is not a true sphere because it is not perfectly round, but it is spherical and it's volumetric, and we can see that the surface has texture. Notice, if you will, that there is a highlight area. There's light coming directly on it. As the form turns away from the light, the shadow starts forming. There is reflected light hitting the surface of the book, coming back into the shadow, and you can even see the shadow change as I move my hand back and forth. And that's the light that's reflecting back into the shadow area. And then there's the core shadow right in there. And that's the darkest part of that form shadow. And then we have the cast shadow. And you'll notice something interesting here is that there seems to be an inner shadow and then an outer shadow. And the reason for that is that my lamp has two lights on it. And so each is casting its own shadow. So if I turn one of them off, then we have that basic, strong, direct light form shadow going on. So sometimes when you look at something in a drawing, you want to make sure that what you choose to include in the drawing is actually helping to communicate what it is you are trying to communicate. If you have too many shadows going on, it gets confusing. It doesn't tell the story as well as it could. So drawing is different than looking through the camera and capturing an image. In drawing, you create the image. With photography, you capture it. So there's certain things in photography that you can get away with that you can't get away with in drawing because it becomes confusing. And so what you need to do is edit and keep those things that are appropriate and are going to serve the purpose of your drawing. One of the things that's very common with editing is that if we see something like this, which has graphics on it, and we're really trying to talk about the form, we'll get bogged down in the graphics. And the graphics are useful to describe the form so far as we show them actually wrapping around the form, because then that helps create the sense of volume. But we don't really need the graphics for this to be what it is. So don't get bogged down in the surface detail of a form, unless, of course, it is actually the surface detail of the physical texture of the form. So now to the drawing. I'm just going to be using a variety of graphite pencils and kind of just looking at what I'm seeing here and setting it up. You won't have the exact view that I do, but I'll walk you through what it is I'm seeing and the decisions that I'm making. So the first thing I'm going to do, this form I'm seeing as being in front of the bag. This corner is further back than the front surface, or the frontmost point of the orange. So I'm going to start with the orange, and that's going to be my reference point in terms of proportion, which is height to width understanding, and in terms of angles and where things are in space. And just like with the previous set of drawings, I will end up putting in a ground plane. In fact, I'll just throw that in there right now, and I'm also going to create my frame of reference. Just give me a space to work in here. Yeah. If you want to take a ruler and make it really exact, you can do that. I'm just going to, be loose with it like that for the moment. Okay. And what I'm going to do is, looking at this, I want to make this fairly large in the picture plane. I don't want to have like the orange here and then the bag sitting here, and then all the rest of it is empty space. So I'm going to crop the orange against the frame of reference or the bottom edge of the picture. And so that's how big my orange is going to be. And notice it's a gesture. And then I'm going to just indicate where the stem's going to go, and that also is just gestured in. And then from there, I'm going to eyeball or estimate visually the distance from the corner to where the bag disappears behind the orange, and the distance between the orange itself and that corner, and then the angle of that. One of the keys to getting the angles correct is understanding the idea of right angles on your drawing and kind of translating that in the perpendicular as if you're looking through a window that has been gridded off into, say, 1-inch squares, like it's a transparent piece of graph paper. And when you're dealing with diminishment and perspective angles especially, what you want to try to eyeball is how far off, or what is this angle off of the horizontal or off of the vertical. So if this is the vertical angle, say the 90-degree angle, what is the angle from here to here? Is that a 45? Is it more than a 45? Or take it off the horizontal. Is this a 45-degree angle? No, it's probably more like a 30, somewhere between 30 and 35-degree angle. And so that is where the eyeballing and the estimating comes in when you're drawing. And if you get that understanding that everything that has an angle to it is working off a perpendicular or a horizontal angle, it's either plumb or level, then that will help you immensely in your drawing, in your ability to get the perspective angles right just by looking. And then with extra experience, the more experience you get, the more easily you'll be able to just draw something in perspective that looks right. So your expertise, your ability will catch up with your goals or desires through experience, through practice. So I've gone ahead and laid in the bag looking at the width and the height of the orange versus what I'm seeing in terms of the relationship of the actual horizontal width from the back edge to the foreground, or to the front edge, that front corner. So I'm looking at what is this distance on the horizontal compared to the distance here. And it's shorter. And one of the things that helps is if you hold your pencil out with the non-working end rather than the point. Don't hold the point out, but hold the non-working end out and keep this parallel to the floor or directly perpendicular to the floor. And if you hold your arm out straight rather than bending it in different points in space, you'll be able to gauge fairly accurately between the 0 degree or the horizontal and the 90 degree and the vertical. And you just, in your line of sights, aim, kind of set it up against an angle, and then kind of determine, okay, what is that angle? What is this angle off the horizontal, and what is that angle off the horizontal? So now that I have rendered this out, and obviously I got rid of my little doodle in there, I'm going to start fleshing this out a bit. And I'm not going to take this all the way to a finished drawing because there's not enough time to do that within the within the video here. But I will start, and that's where probably the issues that most people have is, where do I start? So here's where we start. I'm taking the side of the pencil, not the point, and basically I'm just lightly laying in the form shadow. And there's also a cast shadow, which I'll lay in over here. The cast shadow is coming from the bag onto the orange. And there's some smaller shadows in there. but we'll worry about them as we go. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue to develop the drawing and discuss it. So I'll stop and start at various points as we continue on through this little discussion here. One of the things also, which I didn't give myself a whole lot of room to do, is catching the cast shadows that are going away from the light source. But I'll come back to that in a moment. I want to talk about drawing through. In order to understand the angle and where the bag ends behind the orange, try to complete that angle all the way through. And even though the orange is in front of it and you don't see that corner of the bag, try to figure out where it is, because that's going to give you greater accuracy. Actually a little more like that. And of course we won't see that point because it's behind the orange, but that's your target to get from here to here. Okay. So getting that is going to help you get that angle correctly. So the idea would be to draw through, and then you do the same thing with shadows. The shadow on this bag doesn't start from here, it starts from the corner that we can't see. Now, I'm talking about the one over there that the bag is casting. So I want to determine where that back corner is, and that's where that shadow is going to begin from. And so I'm going to draw through. I'm going to start there, move all the way out. So that's where the shadow of the bag starts. So this, of course, will not be visible in the final drawing, but we've used it as a reference point to get this angle and the line of the shadow coming to the right place, so that again we're creating a convincing drawing that communicates what we're trying to communicate. So now I'm going to go ahead and develop this a little further, and then check back, make a few comments, develop it a little further and check back and make a few comments. So the video is going to stop and start again.